Hi, everyone, and welcome to Made in Ohio, Modern Manufacturing Careers and Training. We're so happy that you're joining us today. I'm Rachael Mann, and I've had the great privilege of working with OAX, who's the sponsor for this webinar, and helping to promote OTCs and just making the great work that's happening visible. And today we're going to be addressing a very important topic. But first, just some housekeeping notes. We are recording, and the replay link will be emailed to everyone who registered. We do encourage you to share that out with your community and folks who may be interested, whether it's as their role as an employer, a legislator, or someone who may be interested in pursuing a career in manufacturing, or even your employers in your community. Also, please use the Q&A box at any time. If your question fits with the flow, I'll weave it in. Otherwise, we'll address it at the end of the webinar. We'll have some time at the end. And then also feel free to drop helpful links or resources in the chat. We will share those out with everyone on the call. We do get better together as we're sharing out different resources that may be beneficial. And over the next hour, we will bust outdated myths. We will spotlight Ohio's manufacturing boom and show the training routes, especially through OTCs that lead to high wage, high skill, and high demand careers. So let's dive in. First off, we are going to introduce each panelist with their first round of questions. So if you can just give a wave while your brief introduction is read. And for the folks who are tuning in, be sure to expand on the profile of each of our panelists just to learn more about their incredible background. And you'll be able to connect with some who've shared their social media links, or be able to look them up and be able to connect, so that if there are questions outside of today that you would like to ask, or if you just want to continue learning more from them, you'll be able to do so. First up, we have Jessica Borza, who is a workforce strategy lead for the Ohio Manufacturing Association. Jessica steers statewide talent strategy for Ohio's 700,000 strong manufacturing workforce. She oversees a $23.5 million Good Jobs Challenge grant and built a network of 19 industry sector partnerships. So again, be sure to expand on her profile so that you can learn more about her impressive background. But Jessica, to kick us off, can you share a bit about your work with the Ohio Manufacturing Association and the recent headline or data point that makes you say Ohio manufacturing is on the rise?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Rachel, and hello, everyone. Glad to be here. So just a little bit about the Ohio Manufacturers Association for those of you who might not be familiar. We are a membership organization representing manufacturers in all industries across the state of Ohio, and our mission is to protect and grow Ohio's manufacturers. So it is understandable that we are highly interested in making sure that manufacturers have the talent that they need to stay strong and to grow. And so we're working closely with our partners, like those that are on the webinar here with me today, and especially with our Ohio Technical Centers, to make sure that people in our communities, potential students, those who influence their career decisions, really understand the possibilities in manufacturing, all of the myriad of career pathways that are available, and just the great jobs in manufacturing. So getting the word out, but also making sure that those programs are really well aligned to the skills that are needed in modern manufacturing. And our Ohio Technical Centers do a great job of doing that. And we'll, I'm sure, talk more about that as we go through the session here today. But you asked about a data point, and I think this is probably the most impressive visual that I have seen. It's kind of hot off the press, but what you see on the left is what the demand for manufacturing talent is. And so on any given day in the state of Ohio, we have between 50 and 95,000 job openings for operators. So these are sort of entry-level positions, and technicians, which are more at the mid-level. So that's not including engineers and a variety of other roles that you can find in manufacturing, but operators and technicians, anywhere from 51 to 95,000. And on top of that, we know, because of the great economic development activity that is happening in the state of Ohio, that at minimum, Kristi Clouse has created demand for an additional 27,000 operators and technicians. So the number is just going to grow. Those are ones, commitments that we have in hand. Great manufacturing companies who have decided to locate in Ohio, who are going to be hiring in really exciting careers. So bottom line is individuals who are choosing to make manufacturing their career in Ohio are highly sought after. There are lots of opportunities in manufacturing across a number of different industries, and we have the data and the real world experience with our manufacturers to prove that out. So hopefully that's helpful, Rachel.
So we will share this graphic out with everyone because this is just such an important piece that I think that everyone can benefit from. Next up, we have Kristi Clouse, who Jessica just referenced, who is the Senior Managing Director of Talent at Jobs Ohio. Since Jobs Ohio's launch in 2011, Kristi has crafted client-specific talent incentives and aligned state, regional, and local partners to solve skill shortages in high-growth sectors. Kristi, in your role at Jobs Ohio, you collaborate with partners at the state, regional, and local levels. What in-demand skill shortages are you seeing, and how can job seekers and students capitalize on these needs?
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Excited to be here and have the conversation with you. And thanks, Rachel, for pulling us together and our technical centers across the state. To your point, just to reference, Jobs Ohio is the private corporation that does economic development on behalf of Ohio, and we focus on 10 key sectors, manufacturing being one of those critical spaces that we focus on from an economic development perspective. We're helping companies in those sectors grow here, and we're also trying to attract new companies into Ohio to make investments and job growth for Ohioans. And so that's our mission. That's what we wake up and worry about every day. And part of that company's success is to make sure that they have the talent and the workforce that they need in order to be successful and profitable here in Ohio. As you referenced in my bio, talent and workforce initiatives really started at Jobs Ohio in 2017 when we realized there was a gap in a continuing skill gap. To Jessica's slide and other conversations we've been partnering with others on, continues to be a skill gap, and there continues to be more demand than there is supply. In particular, as we've continued as a state to gain economic development projects, but also as manufacturing has been a resurgence across the United States, especially since the COVID pandemic. Technical centers play a critical role in making sure that we have the skills and the talent in both the upcoming talent pool in the K through 12, in particular juniors and seniors in high school, but also in untapped talent and individuals who want to change careers from the adult side of the house as well. Technical centers play a critical role in both of those components. And so since we have established our talent and workforce initiatives at Jobs Ohio, again, focused on those 10 major industries, we've seen tremendous growth in economic development and therefore a continuing gap on the supply and the demand. We are projecting at this point in time that we need to produce about 540,000 STEM and technical skilled talent through 2032 just to fulfill current openings and what we forecast with our economic development projects and other forecast measures. The majority of those in those occupations in our 10 sectors, the majority of those are focused on technicians and operators. So technical centers it's in their sweet spot for both of those occupations. The other ones are engineers, as well as IT, data analytics, computer science, those kinds of skill sets are needed. Here in Jobs Ohio, we make sure that we partner, to your point, Rachel, with state, local, and regional entities in our ecosystem. Ohio has a great system in place to help individuals and Ohioans either, come out of school and get a job, go through a certificate program, get a 2-year degree, get a 4-year degree. We have a lot of pathways and we have a lot of assets across Ohio, including our technical centers. And so part of what we've been doing in helping the larger gap from a talent perspective at Jobs Ohio and addressing these challenges is assisting companies with attracting, developing, and retaining their talent. We've invested about 700 million so far and assisted about 600 companies, not to mention a few thousand companies across Ohio that we've helped in just advising and connecting to the ecosystem, again, like the Technical Center workforce programs. In those, I'd like to just call out a couple things from those skill sets and how the technical centers can really play a key role in our assistance. Don't assume that every employer has the connectivity with a technical center or the ecosystem partners. So we have, for example, built out a welding program down in Southern Ohio for a particular company and their local technical center to make sure that we could increase the equipment. We could pull the employer in. They engaged with the students early in their journey. They also helped advise on the career side of what it looks and feels like to work for the company. And it was a great engagement. And we were able to work with that technical center for sustainable planning for that, not just that company, but others to increase the number of welders that were needed in Southwest Ohio. So that's one very specific, but I think a good example of how we've partnered and brought the ecosystem together for the industry specific needs. And as we know, welding is definitely something that's in demand right now across the country, but in Ohio in particular.
It's interesting that you mentioned welding. I was just meeting with someone from a manufacturing company here in Pennsylvania who was specifically talking about that and how at some of their career fairs that they'll find out that a student is in manufacturing, has earned their industry certification, and they offer them a job right on the spot because they're wanting to pull them in. It's just so many incredible opportunities. So thank you for that, Kristi. And joining us from Buckeye Career Center is Frank Polen, who is the Assistant Superintendent and Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Adult Education. He's a 29-year educator, and he was just announced this week as the Ohio ACT President-elect. So congratulations, Frank. You are an incredible person, so you'll be fantastic for that role. And Frank champions K-12 and adult CT pathways. Frank, can you share how collaborations with manufacturers, like the formation of the Multi-County Advanced Manufacturing Corridor and the Tuscaroras, which I probably should have asked you about pronouncing that, so let me know if I got that one right, Valley Industry Sector Partnership helped grow your local workforce, and how have these efforts positioned your county to be part of a larger initiatives like the Civic Labs, building rural community systems? And this is a big question, multiple parts here. And what role does Buckeye Career Center play as an OTC in shaping this ecosystem?
First of all, Rachel, thank you. And thank you for continued marketing of our Ohio Technical Centers and your voice behind all of that. We're all better because of that. And thank you for spreading that word and allowing me to be a panelist today. What came out of a post-conference conversation between a couple regional employers, regional workforce development, and our local Chamber of Commerce president, Mr. Scott Robinson, I believe it was in Pittsburgh. They had a conversation after attending the conference, and it became one of those, why can't we do that in our area? And hence started the formation of the Multi-County Advanced Manufacturing Corridor. And the reason we went that, we serve 3 counties here through our career center, and then also regionally beyond. We also have across the street Kent State University of Tuscarawas. So they set a meeting up. Our superintendent, Mr. Bob Alsep, the dean over there, Dr. Brad Bilski, a few others attend, and we say, hey, we've got to do something to bring these industry subject matter experts, the industry employers, to determine what do they need? What do they need in terms of onboarding? What do they need in terms of training? What do they need in terms of manufacturing cluster that we should be providing? And since that inception, we started the Multi-County Advanced Manufacturing Corridor, and we focused strictly on building our capacity with equipment. And hence the grant writing began to where we're maybe a par 3, par 4 across to Kent State University Tuscarawas. We didn't want to duplicate our services. We've raised about $4 million for equipment just to train our local employers. So that then starts to that grow your own mentality, right? We're going to keep people here. We need to upskill them, provide new skills, or reskill them as manufacturing changes. Fast forward, our Tuscarawas Economic Development Corporation gets involved and applies to become an industry sector partner. real push in Ohio for those. So now we have the Tuscarawas Valley Industry Sector Partnership. So now we convene everyone, the employers, and specifically ask them 5 questions, everything from what do they currently do to what will they need, where do they see their future going. And one of the things in adult centers, right, Ohio Technical Centers, is we got to find the quality people who can teach them, because most of these are evening classes, part-time employees. How do we find these people? So that was a big part of our ask as part of the Tuscarawas Valley Industry Sector Partnership. So we then highlighted that, and they applied to become part of this, what is called Civic Lab. And Civic Lab is sponsored by, Rachel, you remember this group, the ECMC Foundation, who also is a partner of many of us, to talk about building rural communities. And our focus was on manufacturing. So we have owners, we have HR representatives, we have economic development, and then I'm our representative along with Paul Dykeshorn from Kent State University of Tuscarawas. And really what we're at the table to do is say, okay, we have a workforce shortage problem. Okay. The one thing that we're not making more of is people, right? That our where families used to be, 5, 6 kids, now there may be a couple kids. So there's just less people being born. So how are we going to make these people as skilled as possible? Hence the solve for one, extend to many problem solving routine that we're going through this national organization. And every employer now is on the same, they're not pointing fingers and saying it's this person's job or that person's job or this person's fault. And we as educators can't say, well, they don't come see us. We've got to be all on the same page. So those are really the big initiatives that we are at the table for each and every one of those, and are Buckeye proud to be so, Rachel.
Love that. Buckeye proud. Well, lots of great things to be proud of there. So thank you so much for sharing that and for being here today. All right. And our next panelist, Mary Mihalopoulos, who directs the MCCTC Adult Career Center with 2 decades in higher ed and workforce development. Mary oversees accredited training that fast tracks adults into healthcare, public safety, and manufacturing roles. Mary, at your career center, adult learners can pivot quickly into high wage, high skill, and high demand jobs. What manufacturing opportunities stand out, and can you share one success story that shows a rapid move into a well-paid role?
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you for hosting this and the great work that everybody comes together to do. But I'm proud to say that MCCTC and really the Ohio Technical Centers across the board are really having students making strides in the manufacturing sector, especially with electrical maintenance technician positions, welding, and emerging to more of the robotics and automation and what that's becoming today. And that's what we're seeing in the manufacturing sectors as well. It's creating skilled trades that are not only strong paying jobs, but it allows our students for career advancement and continue those career pathways. And so it's opportunities in which they grow in their career and they build stackable credentials. There are so many success stories. As far as just giving a glimpse of some of that, we've had a student in the past that graduated and they were able to go on to a well-paying job. And then eventually they started out about 18 an hour, went on, and within a year after graduating from MCCTC, got into an apprenticeship, became a journeyman, and then became, in the salary range of close to 100,000. But with that comes a lot of building and that, continuing the training. And then just because I know it's hard to talk about one story, but female that was in our welding program also, single mom, was working a minimum wage job and is now working with the manufacturing industry at $24 an hour to start. So the wages are there, but it's also about opportunity. I'm just going to kind of wrap it up with the fact that I know it's more than one success story, but we did have a success story in which a graduate enrolled in the Ohio Technical Center here, and within a year of completion, secured employment, went on to work with veteran technicians in the industrial maintenance field, then eventually went from $17 to $25 an hour with a high-tech production facility, Eventually was able to continue with the support from the company and continue training to certify in other areas so that he eventually became a maintenance supervisor, overseeing a team of 5 himself and now making $32 an hour. And is considering an associate degree at this point in electrical engineering, which is fully paid by his employer. So there's part of that pathway. Many stories like these include upskilling employees, include high school graduates continuing their education, as well as career changers, and even those that are currently in manufacturing. So that's where the upskilling also comes in with us working with employers. Basically, it's stable, high-paying careers and how manufacturing in our region is a full opportunity for those who are ready to make a change. And we're fortunate to have the opportunity of Mahoning Valley Manufacturing Coalition, the OMA, Jobs Ohio, the Ohio Technical Centers, and we all work together for this mission.
Mary, that gives me chills. That truly is the opportunities and the stories of success and how it's changing people's lives. It's such important work. And I love that you mentioned that everyone is a part of this. And you mentioned MVMC. So that brings us to our last panelist. We have Alex Herzer, who became the executive director of the Mahoning Valley Manufacturing Coalition this year after rising from roll form operator to plant superintendent. And he now guides work advanced, MFG ready pre-apprenticeships and multiple apprenticeships across the valley. Alex, technology evolves fast. How does MVMC relay changing skill needs quickly enough for OTCs to update programs in real time? And with that, which emerging certifications are employers now requesting that weren't even on the radar maybe 3 years ago?
Yeah, thanks so much, Rachel. Yeah, in very good company here, but appreciate the time to be able to speak this morning. I think I would just come back to, at the beginning of this, say that in a lot of ways, I think the industry sector partnership model that MVMC fulfills is exactly why it's meant to be there for this exact question, right? How does, our training providers, our educational providers really interact with manufacturers in a meaningful and impactful way? First of all, that's why we convene manufacturers, right? That's why everybody is kind of on the bus, we say, but manufacturers are driving the bus. The way that we engage on the employer side is through things like surveys and assessments, doing one-on-one conversations with our employers. We'll sit and hear their talk through their pain points and things like that. Also facilitating group sessions. We started a new program called Shop Talk, where every 2 months a group of local manufacturers come together, kind of open forum, no set agenda, but let's talk about what you're really dealing with in real time. And really understand like the nuances behind what's really happening. So with that being said, always trying to keep from an organizational standpoint our finger on the pulse, that we know what's changing on the plant floor when it's changing on the plant floor, because we're in constant communication with those employers. And then that builds into that relationship with the technical center, right? So me and Mary interact and communicate on a regular basis as needs arise with individual employers. I will bring those employers to Mary and her team, and we'll start to troubleshoot around how do we really find what are the credentials that are needed for the skills and competencies that they're truly looking for. How do we support them in ways that they can continue to keep their training sustainable as they're building technology. So that might be, for example, doing training on site in some cases. And really, I think having that relationship between the industry sector partnership, the employers, and the OTC really helps to play kind of that conduit for everyone.
Thank you, Alex. It's awesome to hear these many partnerships and how interconnected everyone is. So for the next round, we are going to have all panelists respond to a question and just share their thoughts on a very important aspect of manufacturing. And that's about reframing how people view manufacturing. So what is it that you wish people understood about careers in this industry? And we're going to start with you, Frank, and then if each panelist wants to just jump in the order listed in our notes.
I would say that they're not just jobs, but they're careers. Okay. And many of these manufacturers, what people don't realize is their global impact. Like we don't go a day without being impacted and or benefiting from manufacturing. Every time we go and get something off the shelf, something was manufactured. Every time we go to a store or whatever it be, something was manufactured. Every time we use a roadway or any type of service, it all began with manufacturing. Our infrastructure doesn't happen if there's not manufacturing that happens along the way. So not a day goes by. And one of the things we like to do is that's why we have that incoming manufacturing camp for 7th and 8th graders to hopefully dispel and introduce them to what manufacturing is versus kind of what people think it may be. But reality, I would just say for us that it's not just jobs, that they're careers.
And I can maybe piggyback on that. I similarly was thinking that I wish people would understand how great manufacturers are at growing their employees, that, they really are highly invested in understanding what employees are interested in and like what path within the company they may want to grow within, and then support them. You heard college tuition assistance mentioned, I think here, they're really looking at on-the-job training, but also supporting financially that continued growth. And it makes for a great, pathway, where parents are trying to think of how to reduce the cost of going to college and things like that. You can really get into manufacturing at an entry level through some of these short-term programs through the OTCs, but then get your foot in the door and then have the manufacturer support from there.
Yeah, Jessica, and I would just thread that between Frank and your comments of from an economic, like Ohio is the place to be right now. We are in the middle of this manufacturing renaissance in the United States. And I want people to know that, just from an Ohio's perspective, the size of our labor force makes an impact when companies are making decisions. Our historic foundation of being a manufacturing state, and that history is something to be proud of, because they think about how our work ethic and the know-how is here. The ecosystem is here, to the technical centers being, placed strategically throughout the state, along with our community colleges and others. We have economic diversity that I think is different than maybe what others perceive, especially if they've been in Ohio for a while. But the diversity of Ohio's economy has changed significantly. We are now the 8th most industrial diverse economy in the United States, in particular in our 10 sectors, including manufacturing. So what that translates, I think, for talent is that there are so many opportunities for positions, careers, to the point Frank was making, but also advancement and stability. A technician, for example, that comes out of a technical center or goes into an operator role, has a company invest in them to get upskilled into a technician. They literally can work for the most advanced companies that are doing Airbus suppliers, Anduril, a defense company that just landed in Ohio, new form of transportation with advanced air mobility with Joby Aviation. You can also work at Amgen as a biopharma life science technician in their clean room space, or Abbott up in Northwest Ohio. Like, that one career can go in so many different directions. And there's just so many opportunities across Ohio, both in our rural and our suburban and our urban areas, that you have the opportunity as the talent to direct your own pathway as you enter into the marketplace, in particular in the roles that, Mary listed and others, but we're hyper focused on operators and technicians here at Jobs Ohio, because that's what we're hearing the most from our companies, and in particular in this space that we're talking about. And so it's just, literally the technicians are needed in 9 of our 10 sectors. Financial services, I can't quite figure out how a technician fits into that one, but all of our other 9 sectors need technicians. And so from a talent perspective, that means you literally have a choice to work in life sciences, advanced aerospace, manufacturing, 3D printing. I mean, you kind of have your choice of what you want your career and your future to be. And there's so many opportunities that I want people to know that's Ohio today, not maybe of the Ohio of the past.
I would just kind of take some of Kristi's words and run with it too, and maybe a little bit different perspective. But I just want people to know that manufacturing is cool, right? And I think a lot of times, being someone that grew up in a manufacturing, kind of town, wasn't wholly interested in manufacturing, but then once I got into it, understood that I really was able to like be more of myself in that environment than I ever thought, right? You think about sometimes, especially if mom and dad don't work in manufacturing, you've never been exposed to manufacturing. I think a lot of times students and, adults, they just think they're going to go into these four walls. They're just going to be a number. They're just going to, clock out and, and not really get to, kind of be themselves. And I think that's a big, I can't tell you how many times I've heard students say, well, it's just manufacturing, right? Like that that it's below somehow when they're talking to their friends or about, I'm going to school for neuroscience, or I'm going to school for other industries that they think may be more exciting. And I think just to kind of like say it in my most layman's terms, but really bring back that kind of cool factor to manufacturing.
Well, I think that I'm going to tag on to that, Alex, because manufacturing is cool. And I think that is, part of what we have to get the message out, that there's modern manufacturing that's clean, that's high tech, that you have a position that you start with and you grow into those technician positions across the board with all the Ohio technical centers and manufacturing, ranging from manufacturing is everywhere. And so as Frank stated, it's in all the different careers. And so basically the idea is that we can say manufacturing for steel, we can talk about electric vehicles, we can talk about medical devices, all the different industry sectors, as Kristi had stated. And so that's what's great about manufacturing. And it's also about getting into a manufacturing organization that's team oriented, to be a problem solver. That's all part of what manufacturing is, and how it creates this pathway of continuing a chance to build on to those type of skills that truly matter. And so it reaches all the different industry sectors. And with technology and innovation, with manufacturing, it's at your hands and it's where the action is. So it's cool and it's where the action is. And I think that we build on that with exploring these different careers and how it builds into, those that have come from manufacturing also go on to teach. They all go on to positions like Alex, and you build this career. And so there's many opportunities within the manufacturing organizations. I did just recently visit a very clean space manufacturer. The high technology is evident. It's right there in front of you. And it's basically something that I think that manufacturing is moving in that direction every day. Artificial intelligence, mechatronics, and automation is what's ahead. And we're trying to always stay ahead of the game, I'm sure, as Frank knows, and all the OTCs. So that is definitely a message to get across with manufacturing is cool.
So
one quick thing, I'd say, hey, it's not the old industrial revolution, right? It's as everyone mentioned, high tech, high wage, great opportunities.
Absolutely. And what a great tagline right there for manufacturing, Frank. That's well said. And it just so many great points about the whole ecosystem. Every career cluster is connected to manufacturing. Whatever you're interested in, it can be connected to a manufacturing career. And with that, I have a question from Elizabeth Lute in the chat, which goes right along with this. So we know that manufacturing has all of these amazing opportunities. There's a lot of myths about manufacturing. So as we're looking at making it attractive, how do we put that on the students' radar as a possible career choice? And I know that that's happening in the career centers and through your work and your organization. So if you want to share a little bit about that, about how students are being exposed to the modern manufacturing career options. And I'll let anyone jump in to answer that.
I'll start. That's a big part of our manufacturing camp, to have everyone come and participate, and that's led by our manufacturers. That includes manufacturing tours. They teach through that week. We teach 4 competencies a day, do 2 plant tours a day, led by all of their employees, and they get to see it, they get to smell it, they get to touch it, feel it, all those different things. And we even start earlier with a career connector, being into the elementary schools and saying, here are the different careers that are available. And then we have we have our own exploration camp where we hit it again. We have our middle school camp where we hit it again. We have our 8th grade visits where we hit it again. So just those constant drops, and then sophomore visits, and hopefully through high school and then beyond into our OTCs availability. But certainly being at the table and being out there with them is very important.
And I'll just kind of add to that, Frank, it's definitely about those workshops and those career exploration. And we're very fortunate in which they do a great event, what's called the Skilled Trades Expo at our Canfield Fairgrounds. And it brings in apprenticeship, it brings in organizations, manufacturers, and there's a lot of partners that come together to do this, along with the Education Service Center and the career counselors, and they bring thousands of students that day, in which they actually get to lay bricks, see what it's like to run a robot, do a lot of hands-on activities, do the construction trades. And it's set up over the grounds of the fairgrounds. And they also do a day specified for adults as well. So if they want to continue after they've graduated, it gives them a chance to talk directly with manufacturers, talk directly with employers. And it's become known over the years. It's great efforts of all the people that have put this together, but continuing that and allowing any interested potential students come and spend the day, spend the class with us, come talk to our instructors, go do a shadow, work with them for the day. So I think we continue to build on that. And I know the career and technical centers on the high school, the secondary side are doing a great job with that. We're lucky that we were able to partnership with the MVMC, to be able to put out a trailer that we can take to different locations and events. So it's really about showing them what some of those activities look like on a day-to-day basis in manufacturing.
Yeah, I would just add too, kind of the consistent theme with Frank and Mary, but it's those continual, constant kind of perseverance of impressions on students, right? To me, I have a 17-year-old daughter. She's hit with stimulus all day long, right? Her phone's going off, her Snapchat's going off, everything is coming at her a mile a minute. And, I think a lot of that is, I think about, building a strong workforce, like filling a bucket, right? But it's a bucket that you're filling one drop at a time. So, to me, that exposure, that awareness is we, continuing to drop those drops into that bucket to fill, that larger pipeline.
All right. And we have another question that relates to this from one of our attendees. Manufacturing has been historically a male-dominated industry. What are you doing to address the gender divide? And I'll just mention that sometimes females don't even just the population in general may not even understand that a career may be in manufacturing, or a job opportunity may be something that is manufacturing. My sister and I, in college, throughout our college years, we were working at a machine shop and we were assembling archery equipment. I loved it. It was hands-on. It was something that gave me a break from my studies. I looked forward to going to that machine shop and assembling archery equipment. I had no idea that was manufacturing. And that was from several years in my younger years. But I'll let you chime in. What are some ways that we can help to address this gender divide?
I can jump in here and just say, for the Ohio Manufacturers Association has recognized the fact that we are underrepresented with women in manufacturing in Ohio, and have been working intentionally to figure out how do we get more women interested and, just consider the possibilities. I think sometimes, as you say, women aren't even considering manufacturing for, whatever reason. And so, we're partnering with our industry sector partnerships like the MVMC and the Tuscaroras Group to partner with community organizations to go out and have conversations with women to help them to understand what's possible, and then make sure that there are on-ramps, short-term programs that are available to them if we do pique their interest. The other thing that we're doing is working with manufacturers on the other side of the equation to make sure that they're thinking about how do they maybe think differently about scheduling, for example, not just women, but working parents in general. Is there a way to structure shifts so that someone can work part-time while their, while their child is in school, for example? And so, how can they think differently about, some of those things so that it's more accommodating to, working parents and women in particular?
Yeah, and Rachel, would just add to Jessica. Jessica and I, we work on this challenge pretty much on a weekly or monthly basis together on some of the advisory groups that we're on, and it is top of mind. I think the one thing that we've been trying to make sure from a Jobs Ohio perspective, helping in making sure that both the employers and our partners understand that some of the persona work we've done is that they have to see themselves in that role. And so if they don't see a like person, they're not going to necessarily feel comfortable and confident in that position. So we've been working a lot with employers to make sure like their career landing page looks and feels a certain way and is open and inviting. They use testimonials. They have those mentors that go out to schools and to technical centers, and it is represented with women, minorities, underserved populations, so that they can see themselves and they encourage the diversity within their own workforce. I think the other thing that we very specifically, when two projects come to mind, when Intel made their announcement for the semiconductor plant here in Central Ohio, they had certain aspirations and goals. In particular, they wanted to see more of a representation with females in this fab here in Central Ohio. And so we worked with CTEC, a technical center here in Central Ohio, Columbus State Community College, and COTC, another community college, on making the ads for the semiconductor program and the technician programs that would funnel and talent pipeline for Intel and others would be representative within those markets. So we designed intentional ads, to Jessica's point, like those calls to action and those kinds of things were very intentional. And we saw great traction with those ads in particular, and social pushes. So I just think, just to reinforce, like, you have to talk. They need to see themselves in those positions, both at the entity, like the school, the institution, but also within the employer marketplace.
Go
ahead, Frank. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I was going to jump in because both of those, they made great points on that. We have one of my previous lives, I was a college recruiter at different times, and you can't compete at the dinner table, so you got to win with the moms. You know what I'm saying? You got to be able to share that message. But we have a local employer, Chris Lane, that has about 4 or 5 Wendy's restaurants, and what he talks about is, I'm your first manufacturing job. So think about that. You are manufacturing, and you go back to the people who are working in fast food. They don't ever think about themselves as manufacturers. So I got teenage daughters. If they work in fast food industry, they don't see themselves as working in a manufacturing, but in reality, they are. And so now, how do we capitalize that? How do we use that? Hey, well, you're already in manufacturing. You're already doing this or that. You're already working at the local McDonald's or whatever it may be, and capitalize on that. And I agree that, all of our marketing campaigns and how do we get the females in the male programs, if you will, through the ads and billboards, all of these, because there's more than just the person standing at the machine in the manufacturing plant. To each of the ladies' points here, there's all kinds of opportunities within those. But we never really thought about the fast food being the first manufacturing, and usually there's a lot of young females working in those industries.
Excellent point. I had not thought of it that way. So many great recommendations here, and I think it really that putting the female representation out there so that people see that representation, that's truly key. All right, so we're going to jump into another round of questions. So for this next round, we're going to start with you, Alex. Can you share how MVMC addresses some of the talent challenges? So we know that MVMC unites employers that normally compete. What common talent challenges do you see in the manufacturing arena? And how does your organization address these and ensure that those routes to high wage, high skill, and high demand jobs are visible to job seekers?
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. Really great question. And, I think, you've heard it a few times here from Kristi and Jessica. I mean, those positions are those technician positions and those operator positions, right? They need people to come in to run the machines, and then they need individuals to, maintain the machines and keep them running. But what I think is really interesting about the landscape is, and we say in the Mahoning Valley, everybody from Schwabel's bread baking company that's been baking bread the same way for 125 years to, we have Ultium battery cell manufacturer making, future vehicles for electric vehicles. But what is consistent across the board is a need primarily for those two occupations, right? And I would say I would double down and say even more so now. It's not even just not enough people coming through the door, but retaining those individuals. So being able to actually, have somebody come in and feel confident in their abilities and encouraged by their circumstances, right? So much that they will kind of continue through that emotional perseverance where, and like I said, it can be challenging and it can be frustrating kind of starting a new job. But I think a big part of it is that a lot of folks, and we talked about this earlier, don't really understand what these jobs are. They don't understand, what really happens behind those four walls. We talk about visibility of careers, right? Everybody sees a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, right? Nobody sees a CNC machinist. Nobody, you know what I mean? Nobody sees, the precision welder, right? And being able to kind of create that awareness, I think, is a huge piece of that. So we work really hard and really consistently, both with our K through 12. So working with students through hands-on activities, taking students on tours of manufacturing, opening up their eyes, now currently working with some virtual reality technology, completing a library of actual 360-degree virtual tours of local manufacturers here in the Mahoning Valley. Again, kind of trying to overcome that barrier of like transportation and group size when it comes to tours. But then also getting hands-on with them, right? We just brought a tour of young ladies, middle school girls from a YWCA camp to a local manufacturer that make microelectronics, right? And they did an awesome job of bringing out, young folks, interns that are working for them, primarily female, employees, to connect with these young ladies. And it's things like that, really getting them like involved in kind of that exposure piece of it. And then on the other side, honestly, a lot of the population just in our region struggles with barriers to employment, right? Whether that's transportation or childcare or access to, training or healthcare. So we also work directly with job seekers. We have training programs that help support individuals through that, get them that training, get them that access to training, and then get them directly into a manufacturing job. But there's a lot that kind of comes with that transition, right? So do you have everything kind of lined up, the transportation and all that kind of stuff? So we're actually coaching with individuals. And then the other piece I would say, that we're working to help connect more folks into those high wage jobs, is we're also working on the back end with employers, right? Helping to kind of change hearts and minds. So, we had talked about, kind of this, that there's not adequate amount of people, but how do we tap into some of these maybe, untapped talent pools that traditionally, haven't been recruited well. So we mentioned women, people of color, justice impacted, those with disabilities. And so we're also working to provide educational opportunities for our employers. Most recently, focus heavily on mental health in the workplace. That's kind of been a big push for us this year, and understanding how, that all kind of affects the culture and everything within their facility. So, helping to ensure that the manufacturers are really prepared for these different populations. But then it all comes down to like, they're also running, I keep using that term, driving the bus, right? And what that means is that they have input into our programming, whether that's on the youth side. We have a group of what we consider career ambassadors. Those are employees from local manufacturers that, are open to volunteering and helping to provide feedback on programming. Likewise, with our training programs, bringing a group of employers that are active with those programs. And again, garnering that feedback, because at the end of the day, what we're really doing is to serve them. So making sure that their voice is a part of that, I think is a kind of key to connecting individuals.
Fantastic. And Mary, can you share with our audience how partnerships with business and industry result in improved programs and outcomes?
Absolutely. Thank you. I mean, partnerships with local business and industry is really the cornerstone for career and technical education. That's how we do our program development at MCCTC and throughout all the Ohio Technical Centers. Obviously, we create program advisory committees in which we bring in representatives from manufacturing or healthcare, all the different committees based on the training that we provide. But additionally to that is that consistent communication with employers, coming into our labs, working with us on equipment, and making our curriculum relevant to what's happening and co-designing our coursework with us. So it really is an integral part of what we do every day, as well as for the training we do on the secondary side and the post-secondary with the customized training, sitting down and finding out exactly what the employer needs are and being able to provide the training in that skills that are needed that develops the workforce training that they're telling us is in demand. And it does go from the operator level to the technician level in manufacturing. A big key to that too is when employers are involved, then we are involving them with our students who are then going to be graduates, and we're creating job access and hiring pathways. So we bring them in to do actual interviews or do actual weld tests or take them through certain competency skills, finding out what credentials directly relate to the type of training that we need to be doing to fit those jobs. And so that is definitely key and is a bridge for what we need to have on a constant and continuous basis. With partnerships with manufacturers and again with Mahoning Valley Manufacturing Coalition, not only are we collaborating with curriculum and equipment and supplies, but we're trying to look at providing a pathway to interview our graduates, to be able to continue to provide services for employment as these students graduate and then as they start their careers, because that is what it is. It's a career for them. And we want to make sure that the training matches with those skill sets. So additionally, one of the organizations called Advanced Robotics for Manufacturing. So there's organizations like that. We've been lucky to be involved with an ARM endorsement, and it's a network of industry, government, academia, and it allows us to convene kind of more on a national basis as well. So being involved and partnering in these type of collaborations is key to developing the right training from, again, operator to technicians, to be able to look at what's happening in the industry, not just today, but 5 years from today. Basically, the stronger relationships that we have with our businesses and workforce entities creates this regional ecosystem, as Kristi mentioned. It is truly an ecosystem that's built around manufacturing workforce development.
Thank you, Mary. And wow, this has been such an incredible hour. I just looked and I saw that it's 12:55. How is this happening so fast? I feel like we should have had a 2-hour webinar, but we are definitely going to have a second, a manufacturing part 2, because there's just so much I still want to talk about. But if I can have you, Frank, if you can answer another question that came in what ways will the OTCs differ from the traditional adult education centers that we have in place?
Well, the OTCs is a rebranding of our traditional adult centers. However, I believe more customized training, more direct meeting the employer's needs is probably more in line with the Ohio Technical Centers and more aligned to industry recognized credentials that would then be great for employability and that upskilling of employees.
Thank you, Frank. And then we have a comment from Connie with the OTCs, and she's sharing that OTC is Ohio Technical Centers is just another name for our adult education centers located in our career centers. Thank you for that. And she provides a link here that you can see to ohtechcenters.com, and we will share that out with our resources as well. And I want to make sure we hear from everyone for one last rapid round. So I'm going to ask a question, and then if under 1 minute, so maybe around 30 seconds, if you can respond. So the question is, let's see. Oh, here we go. Hold on 1 second. All right, so the rapid round is why manufacturing? And we're going to start with you, Kristi, and then each person just jump in for a rapid response to why manufacturing to close us out today.
Thank you. And thanks for everybody this afternoon. We already said it, but it is cool. It is innovative. I would, we didn't talk about it, but innovation is happening inside our manufacturing companies, and it is building both the current and the future for the US and Ohio economy, and so in the global economy. So from my side, if you want to be a problem solver and you want to be on the edge of technology and innovation, manufacturing is the place to be.
I would jump in. I would just say it's the bedrock of our economy, right? I mean, I think whether, regardless of the generation or, the things that you've experienced, like understanding that is foundationally, Frank, you had mentioned that, we need manufacturing. And I think that's what I would, if I had to pick one thing, that's where I would go.
Do you want to make a worldly impact? Manufacturing is a service.
Mary and I have a standoff.
I'll let you go.
Go ahead, Mary.
I would just say, just to tag on to Frank, thank you, Jessica. Innovation meets impact. So exactly that. And innovation is the one thing that I think we all need to understand, that is modern manufacturing isn't just about making things. It's kind of shaping the future with smart technology, with the skilled talent and real world purpose.
Love that. I love everything that everybody said, so it doesn't leave much, but I would just say that manufacturing is exciting, it's interesting, it's engaging, and it is what you want it to be.
Well, thank you. What a great way to end. Just so many snippets of really what makes manufacturing so valuable. And that wraps up Made in Ohio, Modern Manufacturing Careers and Training. A huge thank you to our panelists for taking the time to be with us today, and for everyone who joined us. Watch your inbox for the replay link for resources, and also keep an eye out because we will have more awesome content like this. If you found value today, share the recording with a student, a colleague, or a friend that it may honestly change their entire life, their career trajectory. So have a great day and keep building Ohio's future. And again, thank you so much to our panelists for joining us today, and for OAX for sponsoring this wonderful content. Bye, everyone.